Well, welcome back to Finance Fridays. I have Connor, Cheryl, and Isabel with me here today. We're all from Community Lending, and we've got great headlines to go over. But first, I wanted to say congratulations to a fantastic month from this team right here. And Cheryl leading the pack as the top producer of the branch this month, or I'm sorry, in March.
Oh yeah,
Congrats.
last month.
Yep. So she knocked
Yep.
Connor right off his high horse from
No, okay, I
February.
got to go.
But super cool to see everybody getting busy. Lots of buyers in the market, despite what headlines say, right?
Yep.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share one of the headlines that we're seeing, and let me just go ahead and add that to the stage. So this is off of Yahoo Finance, but it's feeding from some Redfin articles that have come out, data that's come out, that there are nearly 50% more home sellers than buyers as mismatch widens to a record 630,000. But it's a buyer's market if you can afford it. So I know we've had a lot of discussion about this amongst ourselves, and what we think and the parts that we think are true or false. So I'm going to kick it to Connor, who's going to talk a little bit about his thoughts, and then we'll go back to this chart that we were digging
Excellent.
into.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. It's great to be here. Just to sound real formal. Now, this article's been out for a couple of months now. You like that? This article's been out forever. It's going to gets passed around all the time. So the problem that I have with stuff like this is that someone posts it like Redfin or Zillow or whoever it is, and people take it as legitimate, as real, and they don't question the numbers, where they get it from. So I don't disagree with the fact that there is a huge supply imbalance, demand supply imbalance, because there is. You got a lot of sellers out there. Demand is weak, but these guys are putting a hard and fast number on it, saying there's 603,000 or whatever the number is, more sellers than buyers. There's a way to quantify how many sellers are in the market through active listings on the MLS, but it's really difficult to measure the exact number of buyers out there. So while demand is weak and we have a lot of sellers, you can't put a hard and fast number on it. So you have X amount of sellers, more sellers than buyers. So that part I disagree with.
Gotcha. What about you, Shay?
Well, I mean, I'm reading the article from this one it's a press release, and it does reference Redfin, but it was saying that 44% more home sellers than buyers in the market in January, and that it's up 30% more a year earlier and represents the second largest gap in records dating back to 2013, which confuses me where they're getting that from, because we were in such a huge seller's market during COVID, which was 5-6 years ago. So they're saying this is going back to 2013. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like COVID shot that out of the water. Yeah. So I think it's nonsense and it's silliness.
Isabel?
I guess the part that like what Connor touched on, as far as like the buyers, like how can you accumulate that number? Because I guess, for an example, like if somebody wanted to buy a home, right, and they're ready to go, if they called today and said, okay, I want to do this application, I want to do my application, they're pre-approved and they go under contract that same weekend. Like, how do you collect all of that data compared to what's on the market? I guess is
one of the ways that you can measure buyer activity, right, is mortgage applications. Yeah. But that's not what we're doing here, because that's not capturing in cash sales
deals
or private sellers. So that's one way the mortgage applications jump up, but that's not a full picture. And then when we were looking at the methodology that Redfin used to do this, they talked about, and actually I have it, I can throw it up on screen, but it says the probability a seller matches with a buyer each month based on MLS data, or the probability a buyer matches with a seller each month based on proprietary Redfin data. But it doesn't really encompass everything, and there's no way to get an accurate number on that, right? Okay. Yep. So when we look at it, then what does that say to people that are sellers? If I'm a seller and I'm reading this, what am I thinking? And what advice would you have for a seller?
Who wants to go first?
Well, I mean, but kind of a little bit different than that. What I wanted to point out is if I'm a buyer looking at the market and I look at that graph, I mean, what am I going to think, or what am I going to feel when I'm looking at that graph? I'm going to be afraid. I'm going to say, oh my God, look at the number of homes that are for sale and lack of buyers. But if that were true, if that is a really hard and fast number and we have that many more sellers than buyers, what would happen with prices? They're not going to, they're not going to stay stable. They're not going to go up as they have in a lot of locations, or they're not going to be down slightly. They're going to plummet, and they really haven't. So that's another reason why I don't really agree with that chart. I mean, is it 400,000 more sellers than the buyers? Who knows what the number is. There is more sellers now. Demand is weak, but I just don't buy into that number of 600,000 because there's really no way to easily measure that.
Yeah.
Well, we looked at numbers too, Connor, from Florida Realtors, and the thing is yeah, like you said, sellers are gonna. If it was me, I'm gonna look at it and go, okay, I'm up against all these other people in my neighborhood. I'd have to significantly drop my asking price and leave money on the table because I just want to get mine sold the fastest. And that's what we are seeing is some realtors are being a little more strategic in going a little lower than what everyone else is asking for, and their property is the one most likely selling. So yeah, this one may be upgraded, but they're like, I'm getting a better deal here. It's a lower payment. So, but sellers, I think there's still a lot of sellers that don't want to accept that the market value is where it is. I think they're still thinking we're in 2021, and that's just not the case. So.
Yeah, I mean the issue that I have with this is not so much that they're talking about the demand supply imbalance. The issue that I have is they're making it sound like it's fact, like there's a certain number of sellers, more sellers than buyers. And why even use this data when there's better data out there that is not subject to guessing? Which is, I think you have that next chart if you want to look at that.
The month supply.
Yeah. So this is actual data. It's actually showing at the current level of demand right now, how long does it take to completely deplete the inventory that's out there right now? These are actual numbers in the market, and this is Florida, specific to Florida for single family homes. You want me to go through it real quick, or?
I think so, because I think there's a stark comparison to some things that we know past, right? And so let's look at what happened over the last year and then go from there.
Yep. So if I'm a buyer looking at that previous chart of 600,000, you don't have to show it, but that would cause me to take pause on whether or not I want to buy a home, because there's so many more sellers out there. There's no demand. Prices have to come down. But if you look at actual data, which is what this is here in Florida, it is showing the number of months supply on the market at any given time, month over month, compared to the previous year. So let's just start with February 2025 at the bottom. There was 5.3 months of supply, which is a 35% increase over the previous year. So what does that mean? That basically means that there's not a lot of demand. You've got a lot more sellers come onto the market. So the month supply has jumped up significantly from 1 year before. And if you keep going March, April, May, you can see that it was going up 5.5, 5.6. That means more inventory in the market, less demand. But look at where we're starting to pivot now in, August. We go 5.3, 5.1, all the way to 4.9, 4.6, jumped up to 5.2. February was 4.8. So what does that mean? That means that despite that other scary looking chart about so many sellers on the market and no buyers, this actually means demand's picking up and inventory is decreasing because there's more buyers in there and less inventory. So this is a much more positive spin on the market, and it's actually factual because they're not making the data up.
And, going back to 2009, which is what you and I, Connor, were talking about. So when we see this big number of 630,000 more sellers than buyers, but then you look at the months of supply. And so even in February of 25, we had 5.3 months of supply, but in the height of the housing collapse, we had 19 to 20 months of inventory.
Way worse.
Way worse. So they're trying to say like, oh, it's so bad. This, it's a record. It's history making. But is it?
Well, when you quote 5.3 all the way down to 4.8, that's not very exciting. That's not going to get people to click on that and go, oh my God, look at the market. It's crazy right now what's going on. So when you quote there's 600,000 more sellers than buyers, that's going to get eyeballs. And that's what they're after, basically.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So out of all the sellers that are out there in the market, how many of those sellers are actual buyers themselves after they sell their property? does that not like kind of go in both buckets?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, in this market, with the lack of foreclosures, I would say it's probably pretty high. But you have a lot of first-time home buyers too, which is pretty high. Which I don't know what yeah, it's like 30% or so, something like that. It kind of bounces around between 25 and 30%. So that number's high, but yeah, in a tough environment, there's a lot of people that get foreclosed on or forced to sell their house. Then they just rent after that. But we're not in that kind of environment right now.
Right.
Well, remember when we did our first video and it was Trump asked for however many 200 billion in mortgage-backed securities to be bought. Remember that week alone, our mortgage applications just within our team, I think they said increased like 28%, right?
Yeah.
Just within that 2 weeks of that headline coming out. So we've seen the demand it's clearly pent up demand is what we were saying. And here they're saying that there is no demand. And we're like, there is. It may not be as significant as COVID, but that's also because rates were low, prices were significantly low, but that drove everything right back up.
And COVID was the anomaly, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't
a phenomenon.
Yeah. So a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. I'm going to have to use that. So when we unpack it all, and I go back to what we started these for, we started them because we see all these headlines, whether it pertain to mortgage or real estate, or whether it's just regular news cycles. And it's the shock and awe. It's the shock and awe. Oh, will you read the article? Will you pass the article along? Will you share it? Because that's how they make their money, right? So it's really important if you're in the market to get a home and you're watching some of this stuff, that you either consult with a professional or you dig into the data yourselves to really get educated, and not just go with that headline, because the headline sometimes can be misleading. My question, if you're a buyer right now, and maybe Isabel, you can opine on this. If you're a buyer right now and you're looking at that, now you're pausing, like Connor said, what are your thoughts? Should they be entering the market or should they be sitting on the sidelines?
I think it's a great time to get into the market right now. I think they have a lot of negotiating power with the sellers at this point too, because they're wanting to sell.
A doubt.
Yeah. So I think it's a great time.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because if you look at that chart, and even though I don't believe it's a hard and fast number of 600,000 more sellers than buyers, you can go, yeah, I totally agree. There's a demand supply imbalance. Demand is weak. You got a lot more sellers out there, but that's a positive. That is what you want. That means negotiation power for the buyers.
Yes.
Now is the time to get reductions off list price because of that imbalance. So don't look at that as a negative. That's actually a buy-in signal, is what it is.
Can I add, my buyer from Georgia got $36,000 seller concession. My buyer just now got $20,100, like the significant amount of concessions coming over. And that's just in 2 transactions, already over $50,000, $60,000 in concessions. I'd like to see like a chart that breaks down like how many concessions we've actually had in our team. That would be pretty cool to reflect to show.
Yeah, good point.
But it's definitely happening. 10,000 here, another 10,000 on another customer. I swear every customer we have has a seller concession of at least 10 grand.
Or they're getting a hell of a deal because they're going in and offering under list.
Yeah.
And so it is time right now.
Everyone does. Yeah. They're always offering below list.
Because investors are gonna flock. They know that there's no competition. They know that's
a point. Look at how many DSCR loans we have in pipe right now. Look at how many investors are coming into our world right at the moment. And if that's not telling, and it was at Warren Buffett, Connor, your memory is so much better, but what was his saying? And I just tried to look it up. When people are running from it, run to it. Was it him that said that?
Yeah, a lot of people say that it's a contrarian point of view, where there's blood in the streets. That's when you want to start buying. When no one else wants to buy, that's when you should buy.
So when you see headlines like this that are giving people pause, it's really the signal is the opposite. Now's the time you should be getting off the fence. Now's the time you should be trying to negotiate that contract or get those seller concessions. So wild how you can go from the shock, awe, terrifying headline of, oh my gosh, there's so many more sellers than buyers. Now, what about the sellers? Like if you're a seller right now and you're trying to sell and buy your next home, what do you think? What should they do? I mean, because that's a big headline for them as well. Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I just think they're going to have to come to the realization, which they're
Get a bridge
slowly doing
loan.
that well, that
That way
they're
you
going to
have
have to
time
reduce
to sell.
price.
You're
They're going
not
to have to
rushed to
negotiate.
sell.
Yeah.
And also, if they're selling now and taking a little bit less for their home, they're probably purchasing a home for a little bit less as well.
Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah,
had
because they
huge
offset.
gains in COVID. And although some of those gains have been lost, they haven't all been lost. So they're still going to exit most sellers. I can't speak, on a blanket statement, but most sellers are going to exit with a positive number versus a negative number. Now they're going to go and take that money and invest in their next home, which they're going to be the buyer in the transaction
Right.
and have that ability to negotiate. So is it really a loss? And so I think if I'm a seller and I've been sitting tight with my list price because I want it to be that big number, I need to be thinking I'm going to lose a little bit over here, but I'm going to pick it up on the purchase of my new home.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, talking about fear. Cheryl and I were talking about this yesterday, the day before, about the condo market. So if you just ask the average person out there, what do you think about the condo market, especially in Florida? What does that look like? I mean, even I was thinking, man, it's bad. It's really bad out there. No one's wanting to buy a condo because they're afraid of what's going to happen with their HOA fees. There's all these regulations coming. But if you look at that same thing that from Florida Realtors that we looked at for single family homes. If you want to
I
pull,
think,
is it
unfortunately,
gone?
Connor, you gave me the hold on, I'm trying to find it. Is that condo or
Yeah,
is
that's condo. Yeah, you can tell by the numbers. Yep. So this is the same thing that we looked at on the single family homes, looking at month supply. So you can see how much worse it is or was than the single family home market. So in 2025, we had 9.7 months worth of supply of condos on the market here in Florida. That's a 54% increase year over year. And you can see it was going down, but it was still very high. I mean, every year it was, 53%, 51%. It kept going up to 10.1, 10.3 months of supply. But what has happened ever since, like June or July, it started going down. It's not dramatic, but this to me was pretty shocking because I thought it would still be a horrible market. So basically what this means is there's still a lot of supply in the market, 5 months of supply, single family homes versus, close to 10, 9 on condos, which is very high, but it's improving. So you're starting to have a lot more buyers come in the market, even on condos. So the fear is completely misplaced, even on a home such as a condo. You're starting to see buyers come in the market.
so when you think about the condos, quick question for the group. Why do you think the condos started to move?
No, affordability, without a doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
And I think, having the conversation of speaking with real estate agents and explaining what Fannie and Freddie are looking for, how to maybe kind of go a little beyond the job and asking for some in-depth documents for the condo just to prep it properly so we're listing it properly. Because a lot of condos were listed conventional because they see it on RPR that it closed conventional, when in actuality that may have been a non-QM loan. So if it didn't have reserves, if it didn't meet the guidelines for Fannie Freddie, deals are falling out. So now that I think we're having more of those conversations with real estate agents, they're listing it, accordingly, and they're double checking. And I love that because they're following, the lead. And when we're saying, collect this document, get it to us up front so we can scrub it. And yeah, it looks good. Yes, it'll qualify for this. No, it doesn't. You'd have to list it cash, non-QM, or, unfortunately it's going to be a cash deal. Like that's the only route to go. At least they're listing it accordingly. So now they can target the right buyers, but they were leaving a lot on the table with, it was on the FHA spot approval and they didn't list it FHA. It was on the VA approved list. They didn't list it VA approved. So for those things, it's like, we got to do our due diligence. So I think they're doing more of a good job with their due diligence of listing it accordingly.
And that's important too for the seller, right? Because if the real estate agent isn't listing it properly, you're shutting out an entire buyer pool that doesn't know that they could use an FHA loan or a VA loan. And we talked about that a little bit when we were speaking to Patty last week about how you can do FHA spot approvals, or how it's not impossible to get a VA loan or a VA condo approved. It's a little legwork, but it can be done. And that affordability factor is there. But I think too, there was so much noise about condos in Florida specifically. It's really driven down the prices more percentage wise than the single families. And so there's opportunities in those condominium associations now to pick up a property much cheaper than a single family. So that's helping with affordability because there was so much fear about the condo market to begin with.
Agreed.
Wow. I think this was kind of a neat one. Just like looking at the headline and then unpacking it, I think there was so much to consider. Is there any final thoughts for this?
No, whoever writes these articles, they might as well be on the moon with everyone else because I don't know where they get this crap from.
Nice tie into the rocket launch. I like that.
We went to the moon, guys.
Very neat.
No, it was good.
All right. Well, until next week, I hope everyone has a great weekend or week, and we'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.